welcome to America Makes Game Day at Rapid plus TCT. I'm here with Ken Vessey and Paul Bates, and we're here to talk about a whole host of different things, actually. I think we were just prepping and talking through what direction we wanted to take this. I think there's so much to talk about. You know, you represent ASTM and UL. I think you guys have a little history between the two.
Yes.
Maybe we can start there. How do you guys know one another?
Well, we know
Game
each
day
other.
version.
Yes, of course, because we actually got to work together at UL for a period of time, and then as things changed during the beginning of COVID, I'm now with ASTM, and we still collaborate together and work together as often as we can, because why not? It's a great family in the additive manufacturing industry.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's the collective spirit of the community is we've got to figure this out, and there's too much to do. So
Yes.
we got to figure out how to do it together. So maybe we can start there and talk a little bit about ways you're currently engaged and how your organizations are working together.
Sure.
Just UL, in one particular instance when Paul and I worked together, we worked on a standard called UL 3401. And UL has recently released that standard to ASTM to further the development of that standard for facility site safety, to develop that as both an ASTM and an ISO international standard collectively. So the idea of fostering and promoting the industry for the success of 3D printing in that additive space of safety.
Absolutely. And you know, the opportunity to take that information and build out that standard is so important, because ultimately, I think on the UL side as well, we want to communicate with the industry how important safety is, and where it's such a positive thing to focus on when you're building out a new facility or taking an existing facility and taking that step further as you move maybe to industrialization or a production type environment.
So maybe, kind of pulling on that thread a little bit, we're here with thousands of our closest friends in the additive manufacturing community, but there's layers beyond this that aren't here, are represented here, but maybe aren't as connected, but are starting to look to the technology. So what does someone who's looking to adopt or implement the standard, what kind of organization is that? I'm sure it comes in all different shapes and sizes.
Well, quick history lesson. I like to look back at it when I started in this. We'll say 20 years ago or so. I hate to date myself, but I'm an old guy, so I got to have something. I looked to build my first facility and looked for all the information I needed, whether it was material handling, waste disposal, safety, all that stuff. And there was no real place to obtain that information in those days. So the goal for this particular effort is to start to provide that information, have a single source to go to, and say, I have a question on this aspect of inhalation safety, or on waste disposal. Where can I get information on that? And now there's a place to get it. And that to me is extremely important.
And I think, can you maybe kind of talk to the different, maybe some of the subsections of it, if you will. I mean, this is not just metal, this is not polymers only, it's not ceramics. It's really all-encompassing, because additive, as we know, is many processes, many materials, which means there's many different types of organizations who are trying to figure this out. Right. And as they're trying to figure it out, that means they're in the position you were, a few years ago, we'll say, when you were doing this the first time. And we want to be in the position where they start on a different starting point than you did ultimately. Right. But how do they get started? What would if I was coming to you, what would my first step be?
The key is to look at the involvement in the industry and the areas of the industry, because I come from a conventional background as well. And when I grew up, there wasn't things like the internet, where you have the availability to do your research, to learn, and the availability of information, especially now with COVID, with many of these webinars and information being available to you, the ability to search and find that, and taking every piece with a grain of salt, depending upon who's delivering that information and where the message is really coming from and going.
Yeah, I think that as you're saying all of that, I start to see and think through the connection of, okay, but why ASTM? And it's not hard to get from your comment to why.
Yeah.
So you don't want to rely on, or I don't want, to be dependent on somebody's Google search.
Right.
I mean, we learn a lot there,
Well,
maybe, but
that's the standards organization that we speak of. That's part of what I do, is to know that the information that the people can obtain is validated. It's real information that is really helpful to them versus those TikToks or whatever searches you guys are doing.
Ken on TikTok. That would be perfect.
But you can value the information. It's repeatable. It's proven. You can repeat testing. You can have a way to do that from that information. But to Ken's point too, other ways to get that information is to join organizations, get involved in this industry a variety of ways. That was the best thing that I ever did, was get involved in a variety of organizations. SME, for example, now America Makes, certainly with AMUG is another organization to get involved in. Those are definitely good ways to interact with folks that do this already, that have that information, that tribal knowledge, as they say.
Yeah.
But also it's a great way to get exposed to things that you may not have heard of before, because you're only capable of looking for so many solutions on your own.
So that kind of gives us a pretty good snapshot of what's going on today. Some of, specifically the collaboration that you guys are working on between organizations, and a little bit of the reason why. So if you had your crystal ball, or maybe you were forced to forecast, what do you think we need? What do we need for the, not next year, but 3 and 5 years from now? Where do you see us being at, and how do you think the work that you're doing fits into that, or does it mean you need to be looking at it differently?
I think the additive manufacturing community by itself is a very sharing, and especially with organizations like America Makes, AMUG, SME, how it brings the industry together, and it's openly sharing technical knowledge to make sure the industry progresses, not just by individuals, but together as a successful unit. And that's really been, I'll say, a wake up from someone coming from traditional, where that sharing wasn't as prevalent. Yep. And it's really nice to see with this community.
I think also to be successful going forward, again, not to push it too hard, but having a rigid direction of, if we're going to produce product, this is the way to do it, through standards and through really well documented requirements. It's one thing to prototype in a small shop, but when you've got to produce something that's going to be relied on by whatever the end application is, you've got to be able to make sure that it's going to work for that application.
Yeah, I think, and we see it, from our organizational point of view, the same way, and it feels like there's, we're just in a different point in our maturity as a technology. So the technology's maturing and matured from where we were, 5 and 10 years ago. That means, like you said, it is seeing this transition. And what's both exciting and daunting, scary, whatever other adverb or adjective you want to put in there, is in order to really realize this, we have to implement standardization and build against specifications and get people to understand that. I think the optimist in me knows that's how we do things today in manufacture, and like you said, conventionally we're good at it.
Yeah.
We're very good at it as a country, and we need to get to that same place in additive right now.
For sure.
So I think it's really a testament to the work you guys are doing, and what we need to talk next about is what's next, where do we go, how do we do it together, but I think that's for another day. So
Exactly.
Appreciate your time. Enjoy the show. Thanks for
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, John.